trigger you have to hit? Okay, anyway.
That's it. Just turn me on, turn me up, turn me loose.
Okay, that should be it.
Like it.
New intro and all. Thank you very much, Mr. Reinhardt.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all, let us know in the comments if you like the new intro that Chris made for us. Anyway,
so what have y'all been into? I ain't hardly talked to you all week.
Yeah.
I never hear from you anyway, Spencer. You just, I don't know what the crap's happened. You just don't even talk to me no more. Just ignore me. Don't even damn love us no more. Act like you busy. We know you ain't. You ain't doing nothing.
I'm in full hate mode right now. I just hate everything.
He leaves it up to me and you and Roger to solve world problems. We just have to figure it out.
Oh, and y'all are doing a great job with that too. Again, if people could see our private text, you'd have a whole different opinion about how stupid you think we are versus how stupid we actually are. But for the past month, it's mostly been Greg and Misty.
Hey, somebody's got to keep it going.
Look, she has been really busy, y'all. I mean, look, she is like transforming her yard into like Six Flags over Tennessee.
She's building a compound. She's got a compound at this point.
100%. Yeah.
It's real. I'm loving it though. I have to say, like it's way better in person than it is in the pictures. I'm excited.
Look, if them people were still stranded on the space station, they would be able to see it at night. All the lights she's put up.
Yeah. 2 years ago, Misty's backyard was fairly well empty, except for a tiny garden in between her house and the barn. There is no space now. It looks like a hoarder moved into her backyard and just built shit everywhere.
That's true. And I keep everything. Old bed frames, whatever. Like, I don't know. I'm kind of a hoarder, but I mean, it's only ever things I think I can craft with.
She's so proud of it. She's always like, it's a good thing I saved this 1965 dresser drawer, because now I'm using the fronts off of it to make like doors on a hutch or something.
Yeah.
I think it was Thursday. Was it Thursday night you texted me? It was like 1:30 in the morning here, so 2:30 your time, and she was digging through Halloween decorations trying to figure out what she could use in the yard.
In my defense, I wasn't just digging through Halloween decorations, y'all. I got a cool old casket that we made, like out of just some just random wood, and I'm gonna put it out there and use it as a planter. And I built a daggum Grim Reaper. I'm gonna turn it into a scarecrow, so I'm just gonna repurpose it all.
Oh yeah.
Except for she'll put lights in it and like mirrors, and it'll be like a drying dresser for herbs or something.
Yeah,
anyway.
I'll do something with it. So, hey everybody.
Yep, everybody in the chat, all the moderators, thank you very much for being here. So this week, well, we'll bring Bama on in 1 second, but Bama has just been all around everywhere for the past several months now. He's done camp so much and everything. Didn't he come to the man cave, Greg? Not that long ago?
Yeah, he come down here. Well, he's been here twice in the last couple of months.
Well, anyway, without further ado, one of my longest friends in the Bigfoot world, Mr. Bama Murdock. What's up, brother?
Hey guys, good to see y'all. And I'm looking at the chat. Hey to the greatest chat in the Bigfoot world.
Oh, hey, by the way, who made a comment that said right before we got on, Squirrel, you highlighted it, somebody in the hospital?
Atkins. Yeah. Let me see if I can go back to it.
Hold on. I don't want to overlook that.
I think I saw a comment where he had something like a infection or something in his legs or something.
Infection in both legs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Man, we send prayers out to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Thomas Atkins, we got you, brother. We'll pray for you. Thank you for checking in and talking to us and letting us know.
Hey, everybody.
That's what I'm talking about. Somebody laid up in the hospital and they trying to make sure they don't miss the show, y'all. Come on.
I know.
That reminds me of Gary Stocks. That's the way he is. He's in the hospital and moderating 10 shows.
I know he's moderating from the hospital, yeah. Gary.
Yep.
It's like, man, I've just had my leg torn off by a booger. I just wanted to get in chat and tell everybody hello for a second.
I'll be okay. Don't worry about
I got to get to moderate.
So, well, Bam, before we get going about everything that you've done here in the past little while, just in case, I can't believe there would be anybody in here that doesn't really know you, but just in case. And plus, it was Law Enforcement Recognition Day last week, and you posted the picture of you with your canine. Anyway, why don't you give everybody a real quick rundown of where you come from? Oh, and before the show is over, speak of the law enforcement thing, just because it's damn funny. Can you please tell the Ronnie Millsap story? But
okay.
But go back and give just like a brief introduction. And also, why don't you touch on that first part of you being at LBL and how you got hooked up with all of us?
Yeah. Well, very briefly, I was born and raised in Alabama, hunting and trapping and doing all the things that country kids do. And I was lucky enough to get some scholarships to go to college. It's probably the only way that I even went to college. Some voice scholarships, believe it or not. I was raised singing in church and leading singing, so somehow I ended up getting to go to college. I got with some guys in college, and I was the lead singer of a rock band for a while. We traveled to Nashville a lot. So when I graduated, I went to Nashville really as a musician, to be a singer. Little did I know that you could, wad up a piece of paper and throw it out the window in Nashville, and you can hit a really good singer, just walking down the sidewalk. And man, I was working as a security guard sitting in a little shack, letting trucks in this parking lot because my hair was so long that they didn't want me, working inside the building. My hair was platinum white and long, all teased out. And man, there literally was this is before cell phones and all that stuff. I was reading a newspaper, and there was an ad where they actually wanted sheriff's deputies. And I remember reading that ad, and I'll be brief, but I have a letter, that I wrote to my mother back then. You wrote letters and sent them through the mail. And I have a letter telling her that I found that ad in the paper and that job had insurance provided and, retirement and all that stuff. That shows you how it was back then. But anyway, I was a sheriff's deputy for about 4 years, and then I went to the police department and was there for about close to 18 years. So I was a K-9 officer there and just did a whole different array of things, over the years there. a lot of crime scene schools and processing of little thousands and thousands of crime scenes and stuff. I think when I look back on it after stopping all that, my dad was a sawmill man. He worked in sawmills his whole life, just worked with his hands, and was a tough old dude, a sweet military man. So when I retired, I got to thinking back on it, and I thought that really all I did all those years was kind of like manualish labor in a way. But I'm thankful. There's several times. Really, the first week I was there, I should have been dead, but I had a couple of people save me.
Well,
So,
hey,
what's that?
briefly tell about that. Tell about that.
Oh my!
What was it? Night 1 or 2?
Okay, all right, and I won't sugarcoat it. When you first get out of the academy, of course, you're on a probation period, and they put you you're on probation for 6 months, and they put you riding with a training officer for 2 months at a time. So you may be in one precinct for 2 months, 2 months somewhere else, and so on. And then after that 6 months, you're on your own, and you're on probation for 6 months. So this was my first rotation. And for anybody that's ever been in Nashville, my first rotation was not the downtown area, but across the river where the Titan Stadium is. And if you look beyond that, it's some of the more interesting public housing developments in Nashville over there. And they had some big sprawling ones over there. But you have to take into account that I went there from, my town probably doesn't have 200 people in it. I went from that town to a city that was in the middle of the crack epidemic, and it was having the highest numbers of murders and assaults and personal crimes in history at that time. And I didn't know nothing. I'm green. I'd never even been in a police car before. Luckily, I knew how to shoot. I knew how to use guns, but here I was in the city. They put me with a female training officer, and she's one of the best. Oh gosh, she's one of the best police officers I've ever been with, and I think I'd been with her maybe 4 or 5 nights. And when you do that kind of work, you kind of find people to run with. On almost 90-something% of your calls, there's 2 cars showing up anyway, so you end up kind of being on the same call with people, all the same person all the time. So she ran with this other female officer. They've both been on maybe 8 or 9 years. And that's when I tell people, you have to wait till you're probably 8 or 9 years into that job before you're really seasoned good. And you understand how things work, and you understand just what your position is and what your job is. So man, these are two tough old gals, and they put me riding with them. Well, they knew that I wanted excitement and the adrenaline rush. I mean, that's kind of why I got into it in the first place, other than just needing a job. So we parked, and we would do this frequently. We called a walkthrough. We would park somewhere in our vehicles, and maybe we'd put somebody a ways off, and then we would spread out. We would walk through the projects at night. And you learn all these holes in the fences and all these paths to take. And I mean, in your area of town, you just kind of learn all these little things. Well, we were doing a walkthrough, and they told me, they said, we're going up to this cul-de-sac. And I said, why didn't we drive in there? And they almost laughed at me. They said, because it's a cul-de-sac at night full of people. They said, you don't drive up into a dead end at night full of people. They said, so we're going to just walk up in there. They said, there's always stolen cars up there dumped. There's always people with guns up there. There's always dope up there. There's always something going on. So we're making our little walk up through the projects up through there. I can hear music up there. I can smell weed smoke and stuff in the air, man. And it's just a loud thing. Because I've taken my dad on ride-alongs when he would come from Alabama to visit when he was alive. And I would drive through the projects, and he would go, what's going on? And I'll go, what do you mean? And he goes, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. There's 300 people out here, toddlers, babies, people. And I would go, that's just, the way it is. So this is what we were walking into, was just their normal night. And man, we kind of spread out, and I'll never forget the girl I was riding with. I don't want to say her name. She was right beside me, and the other girl had split off, and we ended up having a chain link fence between us. And at the top was barbed wire. And on the other side was a few sporadic little cars parked there. It's one of the buildings, an office building they use for the projects there. And we're walking along that fence, along those cars, and she's right on my left. And the other female officer, she's over in the parking lot at the back of those cars walking through. I never saw the guy. I never heard anything, nothing. I would just walk along the fence, and all of a sudden there literally was a figure just rose straight up from between two cars, and his arm came out, and he went click just like that, right? Maybe that far from the side of my head, right through the chain link. He goes click just like that. And when that gun clicked, he went to grab it to run the action, to put another round in it.
Yeah.
The female officer on the other side of the fence, she literally just screamed gun. And this is one, I tell people this is only one of 3 times in my life when I've seen somebody lose their mind. I mean, literally, it was like a switch just flipped, and man, it was on. She screamed gun, and I saw her hit that guy, and I heard the gun hit the ground. Of course, they're behind the cars now, and I can hear stuff being kicked around. I literally just froze. I mean, I was just dumbfounded. We call that code black. It's when something happens and you don't have time to react. Boom, you're just frozen. The female officer that was with me on the other side, my training officer, man, the second that it happened, she hit that fence and went over the top through barbed wire to get to that other officer on the other side. By this time, it had kind of caught on to me as to what had happened. Now, this is back during the time in the city when if you wanted to carry a semi-auto, you had to buy it yourself. Now everyone's issued the same gun now, which is something we push for, because there's times when somebody's down and I'm out of ammo and I need your magazines to go in my gun, quite frankly. But we were carrying our own guns, and I was carrying a Glock 9mm. And both of them, luckily, were carrying Glocks also. They're carrying the same kind of Glock. Mine, at that time, you couldn't do this to our guns now, but mine at that time, just as a toy, because it looked cool, it had an internal laser in it, to where your spring pin in your gun, so there was a laser in it. She went over that fence and disappeared behind those cars, and there was screaming and yelling, and I clambered over the top of that dang fence and hit the ground. And I can remember when I went around, the guy's head stuck out from behind the car, and I took my gun and I pointed it right at him, and I hit that laser and I stuck it right in his eye, so I'd make sure that he would see that laser hit him in the eye. And that laser hit him in the eye, and he rolled over and grabbed that female officer that was on him. And man, I'll never forget this. And this is why I ain't mentioning no names. Man, she had her gun in her right hand, and she was pistol whipping that dude in the head with that gun, to the point that I looked at her gun afterwards, and that gun had flesh and hair on that dang gun. I mean, she meant freaking business when she went over there. Now, here's the kind of the end of the story and the moral of the story. We got dude hemmed up, finally got him under control. Some other people showed up. We called the ambulance, to come get him and all that. And crime scene guy shows up. I mean, old crusty crime scene dude. And he's, processing this scene real fast. And back then you had rudimentary equipment and you're taking pictures that you developed back then. You're dropping those little yellow things, where like bullets would be and things like that. So it's pretty rudimentary back then. So he's trying to get through it real fast. And the last thing he did was pick that gun that the bad guy had up off the ground. And I'll never forget this. I've never seen the brand like it since. I've never seen the brand before. And nobody that was there had ever seen that gun before. And when they ran the serial number on it, it had been involved in several, crimes over the years and a couple of killings, over the years. And it was a Lorsen, Lorsen 9mm. That crime scene guy picks up that Lorsen 9mm and he racks the action in it and a bullet comes out. And he picked up that bullet and looked at it and he just handed the end of it to me where the primer's at. And he goes, "You got to be the luckiest blankety blank alive." He goes, "Look at that." And that bullet was so old that it was green. So the powder was bad in it. And that thing had hit a bad primer. I get a little emotional about it now. But what's funny is bad guys in the ambulance. And I'll never forget, in all that melee, when it was over, the last thing that he said was he leaned down. He put some profanity in it, but I won't say it. But he leaned down. He goes, "Welcome to Tuesday, MFer." That's what he said. And that just stuck with me because that was just a normal Tuesday day, in that profession. But anyways, I'm not, I don't get emotional because of the situation, but the other two officers, man, they were really there for me that day. I apologize, y'all.
That's God's will. No, I'm sorry. Didn't mean.
Imagine. I don't even like driving through there. I couldn't even imagine working there. I mean, I will not even stop if I have to go through Nashville or Memphis or places like that. I get my gas and stuff like that and keep trucking until I get to somewhere you don't have to really worry about getting out somewhere.
And then if you decide to go to K9, then you're only going to the 7 most dangerous calls. So by that time I had gotten pretty seasoned, and really I was, man, I hate to say it, but I was just downright mean by that time. I mean, I'd been hit, bit, kicked, cut, spit on, had human waste thrown on me, dog bit. I had a crazy lady throw a dang cat on me one time, and and I had to fight with the cat. Really, there's a lot more. When you get used to it, there's really a lot more fun. You notice the more comical and funny things that you deal with, and that you have that 1% sheer terror, though. And working K9, there's times when you go, man, 3 guys robbed the place and they took off down that path right there, and it's you and a dog, and that's it. And you're just in the middle of it.
Part of the reason, yes, absolutely, Debbie. Yeah. Part of the reason that the first time Bama ever told me that story, it made an impression on me. And then if he'll touch on his first Bigfoot experience at LBL, but part of the reason I wanted him to say it again is so that people understand how real these people are. Like Greg can tell you some damn horror story. He's told me a couple stories that I kind of wish I could unhear. Yeah. But Bama, if we later on in the show, if we get to talking about like the trackway at LBL, the Reed Noble trackway. Bama was the guy there because he had forensic experience marking the stuff off and looking at it. And keep in mind, in case you don't know this about Bam's actually, he's pretty skeptical. He's more skeptical than a lot of other people in this field. But he's got the ability, he's got the experiences, I should say, that make him a very valuable component, and his opinion is worth a lot in this field, especially in this field where we try to keep the subject very real, and there are so many people trying to exaggerate and blow it out of proportions. If Bama says, by God, this is what happened, this is what happened. You can take it to the bank on that part. So, Bam, without going more into the heavy stuff right off the get-go, let's get back to some lighter stuff. You actually moved to, is Kel there with you, by the way?
Yeah, we just got back from the Nantahala National Forest last night, so she is out back messing with her flowers and doing laundry and stuff like that.
Just tell her we said hey and love her and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But look, I'm going to play these. Well, thank you very much. I still don't know how we got those super sticker things going. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, sweet. Thanks.
Let me go ahead. It'll make more sense if we play the videos so that y'all can see. And this is only like a brief little bit here in the past bit. I guess my point is Bama moved back to Alabama, and he's been just staying in the woods like a damn hippie hermit all the time now. And he's visiting he's visiting all these places. But look at some of this is just a clip it. Look at some of these videos. And then he can explain
right quick. This is a camping area on the Choa River below the dam, and it was full of kayakers because they let the dam go the other day. I mean, there was probably dang 200 people down here. Well, they got caught in a storm, and that tree right there came down, and it landed on a tent and trapped a woman in that tent and broke her leg. And they had to get in there and cut her out with chainsaws and stuff. But I mean, I know a lot of y'all like me look for widowmakers when you're camping, but this couldn't have really been helped. This was due to heavy rain, but it's bad.
Is this the Joyce, whatever her name tree is?
That's the Joyce Kilmer National Forest.
Yeah. Bama hugging the damn tree.
Mm-hmm.
What?
I love that. If I had that tree in my backyard, I would
Oh,
make
yeah.
a little hut out of that. That would be turned into something really cool.
Those trees, I mean, I tell people, I mean, those are the biggest trees that you can see other than redwoods. And that's just one. I happen to go, man, I hug that old girl every time I go, that particular one. But there's a grove of them back in there on maybe about I mean, you could do a 15 or 20 mile hiking loop back in there. We'd probably do about a 4-mile loop. And those trees are back in there, man. They're incredible. I mean, there's some pictures I have that I'll post on our Woodwalkers page, Facebook page. And those trees make you look like a speck. And of course,
he posts pictures all the time. He's always out there. He's got a really good eye for photography. He posts a lot of really good pictures. Hit him up on Facebook, but check out the stuff that he posts. Bama is a nature hound, and he's always out there. And like we said at the beginning of the show, he's been to Greg's, would you say twice now here in the past few months?
Yeah.
I tell you, I spent a night at Greg's and Greg, he literally lives at the Bankhead National Forest, which is close to me too. So he knew a lot of those back roads, and I wanted him to take me on some of those forest roads because I like to find, primitive places to camp at. and he showed me some good places that the next time I went to Bankhead and had some people show up and camp with me, we went and hiked, some of those places, some of those waterfalls. Bankhead's a land of 10,000 waterfalls. It's incredible. I mean, I always say that if you're on a hike out there and you get caught in a big rain, if you can't find a cave or rocks or some of those, just giant, overhangs to stay dry, man, then I don't know what's going on with you.
Greg's got an overhang on one of his properties that he owns. It's almost big enough for us to have a small meet and greet in.
Mm-hmm.
That damn
You
thing.
You could put a normal size house under it.
Yeah, it's big. So since you moved back there, I guess the point that I wanted to make with having you on, because we don't, if you're doing the Bigfoot thing for real, you just don't have a lot of activity all year long. I mean, you could be in the woods all the time, but you just don't have a lot of activity to report. And I think it makes a very good case that here's a guy that was a cop for a long time. We all know him personally. We can all vouch for him. Bama is never hair on fire. He never calls me and says, man, for 3 nights in a row, we heard howls and knocks and found structure and found tracks and stuff, because it just doesn't happen that often in real life. Bam, how much would you say, were you just out in the woods for what, the past week or 2 weeks?
We were there for 9 days. So, and that was in the Nantahala National Forest.
Which is a good area.
It is absolutely beautiful. And the closest town that we're to for a reference for people is Robbinsville, North Carolina. So for anybody that watches the show Moonshiners on the Discovery Channel, some of those guys are I've seen them in Robbinsville, North Carolina, because it's a tiny, tiny town. I live in a town of only 4,000 people, and there's less population there. But we oddly enough, when I started camping at LBL, I was camping with someone, and when the things started happening to us, we kind of had a falling out because I couldn't tell him what was going on. He just wouldn't have been open to it. The places that I go in North Carolina, he's the one that showed me those places also. So the places that I camp are places that he showed me. What's funny is I was standing in camp and he drove by on a forest road on his motorcycle, but he didn't realize that it was me. And that's been, I haven't spoken to him since we had that falling out. It's been 3, 4, 5, 6 years now. So that shows you it's odd to see him down there.
I don't know if y'all can see this. You see the red dot? That's Robbinsville. Okay. You probably can't see all of the yellow dots that I have on there, but the yellow stars, those are all booger encounters, like legit stuff. And Anthony and I have been all through that area. Misty is right up the road from that area. A bunch of people that we know are all over that area. It's an active area. In fact, where Kumbo talks about his grandmother hiding from the bunch of people that quite possibly shot at a booger is less than 45 minutes or so from that area. It's an active area.
Yeah, and what we like is we camp on a forest road, and the forest road itself is, the forest road itself is about somewhere around 12 miles long. So when you start off, you're up at the top of the mountain and you just go down, down, down until you get down into the bottom and you're along a river. So some places when you're driving along that forest road, the river will be right alongside of you. In some places, it kind of meanders way off into the woods, but you can always hear it over there. And there's a camping spots down through there. And I think I've camped it 1, 2, 3, 4. I've camped at probably 6 spots up and down that road over the years. There's one that I really like, but the last 2 times I haven't been able to catch it open. It's the most remote spot. It's 7.7 miles in, and before you start going back up the mountain that way. And I've camped at that spot alone, I think a couple of times, and just didn't feel comfortable at all back there. Being down there in that area yourself, when you get down there, and you really feel small, in there, because gosh, it's so remote and you're on your own. I mean, you're just other than having a dirt road access to get out, you're just, I mean, you're on your own down there.
The place at LBL that you used to camp all the time by yourself that they blocked off and now you can't get in there.
Yeah.
That's similar. I don't know if they have you ever talked about that spot on one of the shows? That graveyard where we heard the whisperings or whatever it was. Did you ever talk about that one?
Well, that particular spot, you went way out of road at LBL, I think maybe about 8 miles, and you turned off like you were going to a cemetery. That's how you got out to it. Yep. And so they blocked the road off past the cemetery because you have to have access to it. But just years of me camping there and my old hunting buddy camping there. Just for people that don't know it, I've told this on a bunch of different shows, on different podcasts and stuff. But it started out as what I think was rocks being thrown into the water. And then we had the deal on a small houseboat where I was on there by myself and something was screaming up in the woods and a wood knock. And then the last time he and I had a falling out after that. But for some reason, I just was obsessed to go back there. And then I had something happen to me there that last time. I didn't go camping there anymore, but I've taken several people there anymore. I've taken people there after that. After they blocked it, Spencer, you've camped right below the hill, below the spot itself. And there's another cemetery above it. But just that area, for anybody that doesn't know, just what happened there got me interested in it. And I made the mistake of getting on the interweb and, looking at stuff. But it did hook me up with the Beast group, the core group, and Spencer. That was our first little group of people. There was 6 or 7 people. But like Spencer said, I'm a skeptic, and he's been with me when I've heard things before.
I've got the recording.
He has recordings of things that we've heard before, and that, quite honestly, man, the data bank or the Rolodex that's in my brain, I think it has everything in it. And the things that I've heard and seen since I've been out here doing this that I believe to be legitimate, they don't fit in there anywhere.
Now, hold on, y'all. Here's the point of inviting Bama on. Watch. This is funny because he'll squirm while we're live on YouTube. All right, Mr. Cop here that did a ton of forensic stuff. Bama knows forensics, okay? He knows crime scene processing, okay? Bama has heard the vocalizations in person. He's heard more than that. Bama has been there whenever we've camped and something walked around camp, through camp, stuff like that. Bama was there casting the tracks that they found. Now, understand, these tracks are, what are they? Do you have a copy of one of those?
I do. Let me move out of the way here right quick. I'll just go get it right now. It's right here. I can see it.
These tracks are, I want to say they're right at 16 inches. I don't know if they're 15 and a half, 16 and a half. Funny story, me and Anthony, it was Halloween, is whenever they were having this meeting at LBL, and I couldn't be there because my girls are young and I had to come back home for them to do Halloween. And I left the weekend before they were there, and they find the trackway of a lifetime. I mean, they found a really, really impressive trackway. Patrick Noble and Shelly Reed actually found it. How big is that?
It is right close to 16 inches.
That's what I thought.
And,
but there was,
and
there
I
was
showed this,
too.
me and Roger, I was on Squatch and Holler with Roger, and we really were talking about the trackway. And we surmised that this may have been a female simply because there was a bunch of small tracks, around it, little bitty small tracks. In fact, this particular track, if you would have seen the impression in the mud itself, about this far away from the big toe was a small barefooted track that was facing this track. And in a couple of steps, the small tracks disappeared as it got out into the really soupy, muddy part out there. But this was the really first good one where it came down into the woods and hit the mud. So there's an original. I have the first Patrick and Shelly Reed have the first copies, and then I have a copy here.
But Bama,
that's it. Other than the originals.
Yeah, Bama cast. Well, he helped everybody cast the tracks. He walked around and marked them, and he was looking at it. And y'all need to understand that, like, this area where it is, it's right on the edge of the lake, of the cove right there. There are, man, the name always escapes me of those.
I'll be right back to you.
Yeah, go ahead. Take care of Moose. What's the fruit? It's like wild grapes.
Muscadines.
Muscadines. There was muscadines there. This is the same spot that we have found piles of freshwater mussel shells piled up. But the trackway, there's actually, I don't even know. I wasn't there. They were calling me and telling me all this kind of stuff, but there's videos about it on Sawdust Beast if you want to go back and see it whenever it actually happened on the Sawdust Beast page. How many tracks were there, though? Like, total, it was 15? 16?
Let's put it this way. There were so many that when we would do a crime scene or something like that, as elementary as it sounds, at every crime scene, there's a scribe. There's someone that's called a scribe. Hang on just a second, okay?
Yeah. Dang it, Moose. Calm down.
Oh, you leave him alone. Hey, I have a dog that looks just like him. I swear, I'm telling you, if we didn't live so far apart, I would think they were from the same litter.
Kale's out there, tending to her flowers, and he can see her out the glass. What I was going to say is every crime scene you go to has a scribe, and that's somebody that basically stands at the entrance to the crime scene, and they document every person that walks into the crime scene. I mean, they write it down, on a piece of paper, no matter who it is. Well, we had somebody that was kind of the scribe, and it was one of the Pajerski brothers, and our official thing that we were writing on was some paper plates that we had. So I think maybe Mark Newell has all the specifics, but in that we had documented everything from stride length, toe to toe, heel to heel, how many tracks there were, and because they really went off into some soupy, watery stuff. and you couldn't see them. But the real reason when you're on let's say that you're on the street and you have a bunch of bullet casings laying out on the street or something, even before an actual crime scene unit arrives, we would put pieces of paper where every shell casing was. Then you can actually stand back really from that and look at the markings and tell the progression of the scene, so to speak. You can tell if it was two people having a shootout with each other almost by where the shell casings are at, so on and so forth. So we had kind of got that deep into it in documenting, trying to, write all that down, because that morning we had found the tracks, and the next morning was Halloween, and Debbie Jones, who's Debbie Porch now, was going to go get some plaster, because we had like a little quickie meeting between 3 or 4 or 5 people, and we said, this is really more important than we're making it out to be, and we should probably we're just there to we're there to have a good time and just have a little camp out. But we really spent the entire day, man, just casting tracks and casting them. And it was not good weather to do it in, but we still did it anyway.
I think it's funny that everybody, if you've ever been out with us, at the Hollins meet and greet, if somebody had plaster or casting material there, I don't know it. I don't know who, because we didn't pack that stuff. Do you know someone? Squirrel?
Yeah, I brought some, and so did Sherry and several others.
Of course Sherry did. That does make sense. Either way, I didn't know it. They had to go out and get the plaster material. Interesting. Hey, I'll tell you this on a side note. The same place that they found that trackway, the very next year.
Yeah.
When I was up there, and there wasn't a lot of us. There was, I don't know how many there were. But anyway, me and Shelly and Debbie and there's 1 or 2 other people. Someone brought a date, and I can't remember who, and she was with us. We got video of it and everything. But directly across the cove from where they found the major trackway, we found 7, 8-inch long tracks. Yeah. So they look like a little kid, but they were like 2.5, 3 inches down in the mud. And then over on the beach, you could actually see like little kids' prints. Mm-hmm. And they were only, like 1/4 inch down impressions. And they did have a wider heel, even though they were smaller. They had a wider heel, but it's an active area. But bam. So going back to my point of bringing all this up now, you've been around this stuff for years now, just like I have. You still retain a good amount of skepticism, which I think is healthy. I mean, you should not be everything is a booger. Absolutely. But talk a little bit about how far you've come. I mean, being a cop and, life on the line several times. I mean, you're an outdoor enthusiast, but then you start looking into the booger thing. You had rocks thrown at you. You've heard the stuff. You've seen a lot of the stuff. You might not have actually clearly laid eyes on one, but talk about that progression, how far you come and how much you have to roll it around in your head and be like, man, this is damn crazy. I never thought this stuff was real. And then you're faced with the evidence.
I'll be right back.
Well, I got it. Really, the weekend that you and I spent together, Spencer up there with Mark and all that. That probably really changed my mind on the whole thing, and maybe just it was almost like I didn't have to look for the big picture anymore. You're always going to be looking, but it was like I didn't have the big question of, man, is this real or not? I mean, I told you when me and you stood there and the first good howl I'd ever heard hit us, for maybe half a second, I thought somebody has that's my mind. Somebody has to be messing with me. I just thought, but over the course of those few days, and especially that last night, I mean, something just walked from that plateau off in the woods right by between our tents, and it stepped within 5 inches of my head.
You and I were the first ones there. We found what appeared to be a lot of structure back in there by that freshwater pond.
Yeah, hog pond.
Yeah, we found that. We showed it to everyone. Of course, you and I didn't know that we were set up right there at the Field of 13 house, neither.
Right.
Oh, yeah, they did that on purpose, the assholes.
They did. Anyway, but they put us in a good spot, and we got
us in a good spot.
We got things going on there.
Something walks through. I mean, I think I might be wrong. I think Mark even got a blurry picture of something with that
plot watch.
Yeah, that plot watch camera he had set up. But yeah, it was eye-opening, and that was Alabama's first weekend coming out there.
Yeah, it really was. Man, you don't know the mental hurdles and things I had to leap over to go meet some strangers to camp. I'm a little better now, but back then I was not a trusting person back then. But now when I look back, every single friend that I have is from the Bigfoot world or from church here. Nobody from my past, literally no one from my profession or anything. You would think that odd that when you're together doing incredibly stressful, things on a daily basis that you would be friends for life, but that's just, it's not the case. You in that job, you end up being really close to who you're with day after day. If I go to work some other precinct or something like that, just like with working with dogs for years, canine officers are a strange breed. Just they're loners because nobody can get around you. Your dog's trying to eat them up all the time. But the people, I still maybe once every couple of weeks would just shake my head and look in the mirror and go, you've got to be a fool to believe that this is real. And the thing that keeps me going is other people. Because I know people that have seen them and had experiences with them, and I know those people wouldn't lie to me. I know that they wouldn't. I know that it's important for those people they value their reputation. They value going to heaven one day, so they're not going to lie about it. So anytime I have a little doubt, man, that's what I do, man. I think of, because I've heard a lot of stories, from different people over the years.
Since you've moved back to Bama and you're doing all of these, you've always been a prolific hiker and just like going out all throughout the year. But since you moved back to Bama, have you met anybody like on the outside that gave you some information that you can talk about? Have you had anything happen at all since you moved back home? Have you heard vocals? Anything?
Well, I live in the little small town I live in. I actually live here in town, but there is, I'd heard this story from somebody contacted me right before I moved back down here, a childhood friend. And they said something along the line of, you're into Bigfoot or something, aren't you? And I said, well, yeah. This is the way I always say it to people. I go, well, yeah, I'm into it if you believe in that kind of thing. That's what I always say to people. I go, if you believe that kind of thing. And she goes, well, so-and-so and so-and-so saw one. And she goes, and there's a guy, and that's how the stories started coming. From people that were childhood friends, that it happened to them when we were growing up, but nobody ever mentioned it. never ever growing up have I had anybody speak to me about it or as much time, because every day I walked out the door and was gone. There was a swamp on one side of the house close to me. There was a creek and a large pond, on the other side. And that's just where I stayed at. Nobody ever talked about it until that time. And she put me onto a guy in an adjoining county down here that had, generational experiences with them. Grandparents, great grandparents, on and on. And it took a while to speak to him in person, and it took even a little bit longer to get to go over to his house. And you would just have to understand, not just the country folk around here, but you have to understand the county that he lives in too. I'll just leave it at that. It's a pretty poverty-stricken, rough area. And but I went over there and he walked me around and just showed me. You could walk back in there and all of a sudden you just come up on a house that people had lived in that nobody's lived in for 50, 60 years. And there'd be stories in all that area. Oddly enough, a guy that I grew up with that I just hung out with almost every day in the summer, he called me, and as a crow flies, I'm less than a mile from the little tiny airport here in our town. And by airport, I mean you drive by and I think there's a plane, maybe two sitting down there. So it don't get much action. But he told me that he had spoken to somebody that was hunting years ago in the swamp that borders the airport here, the Sipsey Swamp. And he ran up on some huge human-like tracks, and he was following them while he was in the swamp there. This swamp here is a pretty good sized swamp. As a child, I remember a hunter getting lost, and my dad going in there with a bunch of volunteers on those amphibious 6-wheeled Argo vehicles. And they found that hunter. They spotted him from the air, and then they went there and got him. But this hunter was back in there, ran up on these tracks, and as he followed them, I guess he was going faster than whatever was making the tracks, because eventually he got to the point where they were filling up with water, along the creek bank. By that time, he got turned around and got lost in there and just took out running. And he came out on the airfield right over here. And this is this is probably 1976 or 78 or so. So he ran to no cell phones. He ran to the office of the airport and called his family to come pick him up. Left his rifle. I don't think that he even went back and ever got the rifle, if he could even find it.
You got to be running something if you're dropping the gun and leaving it.
Oh, yeah, dropping a rifle. I mean, think about it. But there's lots of, stories around here, and not like officially, you ain't going to get on the BFRO or any website to find stuff. But yeah, it's really boogery. Alabama is the Amazon of the South. We have the most diverse wildlife.
Most biodiverse state in the country. All right, look, you got to talk. Is that the same guy or person? Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Save the payments though, y'all. Whenever we do another meet and greet, then throw in $5 and we use it towards the meet and greet. But thank you, very, very appreciative. Bama, that's because of you. Hey, look, I gotta let the dogs out real quick. Bam, either tell the Ronnie Millsap story or Greg, get him going on another cop story. Take your pick.
I'll tell you, I'll do two little short ones here. And this is just, like I said, this is just an everyday thing. If you're in a city that has almost 1 million people in it, I mean, you can just get anything going on. Now I worked the same area for 17 years. I stayed in the same housing project development for 17 years, if y'all can believe that. Even when I worked K9 and went all over, I would still come back to those projects because I was, oddly enough, comfortable over there where I worked at. And I got to where I was known and they knew me and they understood everything, that I was about. But most of the time you have fun, lots of funny things happen. Well, over in an area of Nashville, there's a place called Forest Hills, which is probably the most wealthy area of Nashville. Some people will say that it's Belle Meade, but Forest Hills is what we call old money in Nashville. So there's some really giant, elaborate homes out there. Well, Ronnie Millsap lived out there in Forest Hills in a, believe it or not, a pretty modest home for somebody that's, been a music star for so many years. And he had a big, tall brick fence that went all the way around his property with a gate on it. Well, one day we get his burglar alarm going off. I've never had his before. Now, you think in this town with this many people, you couldn't remember certain things. If you work in an area long enough, you learn people and places and stuff, just like if you're in a little small town. I didn't know that it was his house. I just got home. So I pull up this gate and push the little call box outside. It rings, and of course nobody answers. And I do that 2 or 3 times, nobody answers. So I go down the next house because the fence parallels the neighbor's yard, and I drive up to the neighbor's house, and there's a man outside. I go, you know who lives next door here? There are burglar alarms going off. He said, well, that's Ronnie Millsap. And I said, I can't get in the gate there. And he goes, well, if he's at home by himself, he won't let anybody in the gate. And I said, okay. Well, long story short, I found some scaffolding leaned up against his fence, and I climbed the fence and jumped the fence. This is something else you learn when you work in the city. After whistling several times and calling for dogs, then I jumped the fence onto his property and walked around his home there. And everything was locked up. I left. I think I got that alarm maybe a couple more times within the same week. Well, the last time I was there, I pulled up to the gate again and pressed the button. Well, this time somebody goes something like, hello. And I said, this is so-and-so, and your burglar alarm's going off. And the gate opened. So I drive in. And here's the funny part. I went to the door and knocked on the door, and the door opened. And it was Ronnie Millsap standing there in the door, and I couldn't believe it. We listened to his 8 tracks, every Sunday morning when I was a kid. And I said, Mr. Millsap, your burglar alarm's going off. And he said, I'm having problems with it or something along that line. And I said, would you like me to walk around and take a look? He goes, sure. And here's the funny part. The thing that I noticed when I went in his home was there were no lights on. It was completely dark inside. And it took me a while. I mean, it really took me a minute to figure out, what in the world doesn't this man have lights on in his house? And there was a reason. Because he didn't need to have the lights on. And I just thought I thought it was pretty smart. You really could have went through maybe, I don't know, and I'm not saying anything bad, but you probably went through and turned the lights on and left them all on, and he wouldn't have known that either. But I went through the house with a flashlight to do that.
Hold on. The first time Bama told this story, just so you know, everybody's sitting around, and I'm a jerk, so I was like, Ronnie Millsap says that something's wrong with the alarm system. But his blind ass was punching the wrong buttons or something and didn't enter the code properly, and that's why it kept going off.
Who knows? And what's funny is he was born in Robbinsville, North Carolina. And so when I was there this time, I was in some little I go in those, I go in places like chambers of commerce and courthouses and stuff like that. And I got to talking to somebody, and I told them that story, and they just thought that was hilarious. Now look, there's.
You said it about the same time I did. I about got choked on my daggum candy.
Oh my God.
You know, the thing about it, you said he had a modest house. He didn't have to have something special with a big, fantastic view. It wouldn't have mattered to him anyway.
Right.
And he didn't need to. He knew where everything was. He could walk around his home just like, whatever. Now, I'll admit, I've been to lots and lots of country stars' homes, rock stars' homes, movie stars, just any level you can think of on really bad calls that would probably label them more like human beings. It makes you see them more as humans, but not really good stuff. But I'll tell this one last one. For anybody that's been in Nashville, there's a large park in the middle of Nashville, Centennial Park. That's what it's called. And in the middle of the park sits the Parthenon. And it's a replica of the Parthenon that's overseas somewhere. It's a huge, gigantic building with statues in it and stuff like that. The park's also a place that's known for lots of, homeless people hang out there a lot. There's lots of bad things that happen there. I've been to several bad things there, but I won't talk bad about it. But right in front of that park's a McDonald's. It's been there forever. Well, we get a call there one day that there's some protesters out there in front of the McDonald's. And I'm working K9, so really the only things I go to are murder, rape, robbery, burglary, stolen vehicles, and explosives. I also did explosives work. I forgot to say that with a dog. So the really only 6 calls I'm required to go to are those really hot, dangerous calls. Otherwise, I can pick and choose calls to go to give people backup and things on that line. I just happened to be driving by that McDonald's, and I thought, there's some protesters out there. I'll stop and see what's going on. So it's PETA is out there protesting because, McDonald's uses meat. Well, as I pulled up with my police dog in the car, my service animal, which was bred to serve us humans. I'm going somewhere with this. So thanks for somebody telling me that Parthenon's in Greece. I think Dorothy's right. But I pull up with my. Now you got to know something, man. I got out of K9 because I love dogs, and I got tired of putting dogs down after handling them for years and years and years. Let me see. Oh, okay. That's the reason I got out of it. So I pull up in this little parking lot, and on the roof of the McDonald's, anytime y'all go around one of those little fast food places, you'll notice there's a ladder in the back.
Yep.
And they normally have a flat thing that locks over the rungs of the ladder to where you can't get up the ladder. Well, man, they'd cut the lock. These ruffians that done cut the dang lock on that thing. And there was a guy on the roof wearing one of those cow costumes with the udders that stick out right on the front where the belly's at. I think it was one of those Chick-fil-A cow costumes. Right. He's up there on that dang roof in that cow outfit, and he's got a sign, that says meats murder or something along that line. And man, he's up there just, going at it.
Yeah.
And here's 3 or 4 other people that are out there protesting also on the ground. Well, when I pull up, of course, they see me, and oh man, there's a dog in a car. And I mean, you got to come over and say something to somebody that's exploiting an animal every day of its life for, 8 years. Well, the first thing I did was I got him away. Well, Eros, which was my last K9's name, he got him away from the car. You didn't want to come around that car. And it didn't take me long to explain to them that, and they were, honestly, they were very nice and they were understanding, and I could see their side of it. If you had caught me a few years before that, I wouldn't have seen their side of it. I'd probably been pretty mean about it. But we got to speaking. I spoke to them about it, and they could completely understand that they could protest right out there on the sidewalk and everything would be fine, blah, blah, blah. But that dude on the roof in that cow outfit's got to go. That's what I said. And he wasn't going to go. So I walked to the back, climbed up the ladder. He's facing the street where all the cars and people are at, waving his sign. So I'm walking up to him from behind with on top of this flat McDonald's roof. And he's dancing and meets murder and waving his sign. And I said, "Excuse me." And he turned around, and their protesters were really trained to do this because we train for protests. Maybe I've even been in a protest before. Protesters will do what's called passive resistance. In other words, we had a bunch of people in wheelchairs blocking the road protesting one time, and I agreed with those people, but we literally had to pick their wheelchairs up with them in it to move them out of the roadway. So when this guy turned around and looked at me, he laid flat on his back, like stiff as a board, with his arms flat down to his side like that. And he said, "Officer, I'm passively resisting." That was his wordage he used. So here is the chain of events that took place up there. "Excuse me," and he turns around. "Officer, I'm passively resisting. I'm administering pepper spray." And when I said that, he goes, "I'm coming with you quietly." And he stood straight up, and we both walked off the top of the roof.
He wasn't going to resist it. Well, if you'd have had Euros with you.
Yeah. Now, what's odd is, and this last one here, right there at the Parthenon is a high rise of apartments. And those were subsidized apartments. So there were a lot of elderly people lived there, and maybe there's lots of people there that, a few people there with mental issues and things on that side. So it was a government-assisted high-rise that had the most beautiful view over the top of the Parthenon and downtown you've ever seen. We would have to go. Yeah, we'd have to go there a lot. Sadly enough, we would have to go there on a lot of natural deaths because there were lots of elderly people or people with health problems live there. So normally when we went there, we were dealing with something like that. I get a call of just a simple argument or something there one day, and the people can hear it next door and some banging going on. So we show up there, and as the case usually is, I showed up and I just told the other car that was coming with me to disregard. I said, "Man, I'll take care of it," because it was a known building for having a lot of people with mental illnesses. There were lots of arguing and yelling and stuff there all the time. So I told them to disregard, and I went up maybe about 8 or 9 floors. I'm so surprised I can't remember the exact floor. I went up 8 or 9 floors, walked to the numbered door, knocked on it. And if you can picture this, I turned completely 180, and I looked across the Parthenon at downtown Nashville. Now, the rail there's maybe, oddly enough, the rail of this old building's maybe a little bit higher than waist high on this building. Well, when I hear the chain coming undone and the deadbolt coming undone, I turned around and the door opened up, and a very large man, I weighed 265 back then, and I weighed 330 pounds with my equipment on. That's how much I weighed and worked out back then. A man larger than me opened the door very quickly and came and grabbed me by the front of my ballistic vest through my shirt and leaned me over the rail backwards till my knees were at the bend of my knees were on the rail of that building. And oddly enough, the first thing that I thought, I don't know what y'all think about this, because I was the person that they called for a lot of suicidal people. Oddly enough, when he did that, the first thing I thought was, thank God there's grass below me. So when I hit, I won't explode. Quite honestly, I won't splatter. And he had me by the shirt and by the vest, and I could hear the Velcro straps on the top coming loose, and there's 4 Velcro straps and a ballistic plate on the front. And I can hear those tearing loose, and that's really freaking me out because that's what he's got a hold of.
You think?
And he grabbed me, and the second he took me over the rail, he started going, please arrest me. Take me to jail. Take me, please. And I can remember just going, okay. The only thing that I could get to come out of my mouth was okay. He took me back over the rail and literally sat me back down on my feet and turned around and leaned and put his forehead against the door. He'd been there before. Put his forehead against the door and put his hands behind his back. It took 2 sets of handcuffs to cuff him. And Greg will understand what I'm talking about. I linked 2 sets together so I could get his wrists close enough together. I took him down a very small elevator, not big enough to take people down on gurneys, by the way, unless you stand them up, just as a side note for taking dead bodies down. I stuffed him in the back of the dang car, and I went over to a bench and just sat down and looked at the park for like 10 minutes and just thought about that for a minute. Oddly enough, about 3 weeks later, they get a call over there, and they call me because they have a jumper, and it was him. And he went to the top of that building, took off all his clothes, which is a common thing, believe it or not, took off all his clothes and jumped off the building and landed feet first on the flat platform that you drive under and park under at the front of the building. So that's how he landed, feet first on top of that building up there. So that was the story about my experiences with that guy.
Golly.
And really, that's just, man, it's just every day. I hate to get up. Sorry to get off on police stories. Nobody ever asked me.
It's hey, if people can say anything about our show, but if anything, we're very real.
I've been to a few that
I like hearing stuff like that, but I know it did tell me one thing, that I know that I don't need to be naked gardening no more, because people's going to find me if I have a heat stroke and think I've done jumped off the top of the bar.
Yeah. The sheer amount of funny things that happen, though, far outweighs the, there's really, really bad things happen in the moment. One thing that I learned over the years is that the human body can take a lot of punishment, but yet sometimes it's real fragile too. I've seen car wrecks and fights and tens of thousands of gunshot wounds to where people shouldn't be there walking and talking or anything. And then I've seen small things happen to where, the person expired or something along that line. But if you're in an area of town long enough and you're around the same people, you learn things about them. And there's just lots of people in general are hilarious, to work around like that. Oh gosh, I'm just thinking of all the different characters in my area of town. Oddly enough, I'll say this because this shows how strange things happen. I got a call one day, and it was during a time when we usually were eating lunch, and the car that was going to go with me, I knew that he was sitting eating. So I gave him a disregard. And it was just simply one of those calls where someone called the police and said, could an officer come over here and speak to me about something? They called that a 1043. And I told the officer, I just said, hey, man, go ahead and disregard signal 9, which means disregard, and I'll go over there. And when I showed up at the house, there was a little old elderly man in this little manicured house. It was really cute, close to a Belmont University in Nashville. And he opened the door up like this, and he waved to me, and he kind of made a motion like, come on in, and he closed the door and walked in. That's when I told the other car, hey, disregard, I'll take care of this. I wouldn't have done it otherwise. When I walked to the door and opened the door, I could smell gunpowder, smoke in the house. Now, here's the way my mind works. Is the first thing I thought was, okay, somebody's broke in on him, they got him held hostage, or they robbed him or something, and he's called the police, and now they killed him, and now I'm going to go in there and they're going to kill me. I mean, I'm only saying that because we've been in the situation before where somebody called us and then they got us in a motel hallway and they tried to kill us before. I mean, it's just the way it is. I smelled gunpowder. Well, that's when I took one step back out and I called the officer that was supposed to be coming. And I said, man, ease this way, 2.5. Now, Greg knows most people know what code 3 means. That means you got your siren going and the lights are going, and all that stuff. And it's very exciting, to drive all that stuff on. If I say 2.5, that means get here quick. Don't turn your siren on because we don't want to hear it. But maybe if you have to use your lights, use them. But that's a 2.5. I need you here a 2.5. So that's when I told the guy. And I'm sorry I keep blowing my nose. I ran out of allergy medication when I was in the mountains. So, but anyway, he showed up and we walked around in the most nicely manicured little house. And the thing that this once again shows y'all how my brain works. The furniture was so old that it was beautifully contemporary. You would pay thousands for furniture like it now. Incredibly, everything had its place, and in a lot of old people's homes where I've found them expired, they have a recliner or a chair, and you can just tell that they have their whole life just right around them in that little chair, and that's the way this man was. We rounded a corner, and of course, he was in the bed and had shot himself. Left me a note, as to who to call and what. First, the note was an apology to me for having to come over there. I just thought that was something else. And then whom to call and what order and along that line. Here's the strange part. I spoke to his son on the phone who lived out of state. And the son informed me that the gentleman had pancreatic cancer. And that's why he did that. A year to the day, I get a call on that street. And this is what's odd. This is the truth. I don't think I'd ever even had a call on that street simply because of the people that lived on there. It's a nice street close to Vanderbilt University. I got a call on that street, and I thought it odd when I heard the street name because I didn't get the street name that much. It was the house literally directly across the street from this little old man's house. And I won't get graphic about this, but I was met by a woman and 2 children. And they said that her husband had pancreatic cancer and she saw him sitting at a desk with this gun in his hand. So that was a year to the day. And I just thought that was very odd. That's how awesome. That took place, that those 2 people right across. I wondered if they knew each other. I wondered if they had known each other, if maybe it would have helped each other, or something. But just, that's just, dude, if you work in a large metropolitan city, then that's the life you lead and what you do every day. And I'm talking the second that I check in from a call, I'm going on another one, and I'm going on another one, and another one. And it's a sprinkling of everything from suspicious people and alarms all the way up to the worst things that if I told you, there's some things that, man, you'd keep your kids close if I told you.
My family I think a lot of us on here and a lot of us that are part of this group and that watch this, I think probably all have the same sentiment. My family is all military and law enforcement, not me. I'm the black sheep. But I often wonder, like Greg, you and Bama, since y'all are on here right now, some of the stuff I've heard y'all say, I've heard other friends, I've got a bunch of friends that are law enforcement. Some of the stuff that y'all talk about that you've experienced, it makes you pause and go, I don't know how you absorb that and keep functioning like a normal human being. You know, I mean, military gets a lot of the respect. So do cops, but the EMTs, firefighters, all first responders, throw nurses in there, all that kind of stuff. You see that tragedy, that horror every day. I mean, I guess you guys to a degree become immunized to it a little bit, you know, a little bit out of it. But mentally, it would have to be traumatic to see that kind of stuff day in and day out and still be a decent human being.
Well, the thing about it, Spencer, you people say, well, you get numb to it, and you do to an extent. You see stuff, being a first responder, military, whatever. You see things that really it's like people aren't meant to see, and you have to deal with it. And the way I always dealt with the horrible stuff is, like people that Bama was talking about that took themselves out. You have to realize that you got a job to do, and somebody's got to do it. And if you don't do it, who else is going to do it? I mean, you're asking somebody else to take your place. So I mean, you have to just make peace with it and realize a lot of times, whether you're pulling somebody out of that bed and helping the coroner put them in a bag, that's one of the last things that you can do for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that still goes back into, you're still, even though you're doing something that's terribly uncomfortable for you, you're still doing it as a service for somebody else. And that's it's really a calling. I mean, there's people, and look, I got it. That there's a lot of officers out there that treat people wrong, and they get on a tyrant kick and get drunk on power.
Yeah.
But I'll promise you, there's nobody hates a bad officer any more than a good officer hates them. Than nobody. There's
right.
not.
That's
The thing
perfect.
is, it makes you look bad at what you do, because that's representing most of the cops. You have a bad experience, you think they're all that way. It takes a special kind of person to do what a lot of y'all do. And that's like my daughter. She's a nurse. And when she went in and was doing her, they would have to go to different places and try to figure out what they wanted to do in their career, where they wanted to be, if they wanted to be in hospital setting, with kids, whatever, and she would go in and she would do all this stuff and see all this crazy stuff that would come in, and her being that young and starting out doing it already. I mean, it's like she said, your mindset goes just completely different in that moment. And then when it's done, she said, I break down and cry. She said, when I know everything's okay, she said, I just have to leave. And she said, and then I just go break down. She said, that's all I can do. And people just built different stuff like that.
And I should have prefaced my entire conversation with this. There's not any of the stuff that I've talked about. There ain't a glamorous thing about it. There isn't anything glamorous about police work. I tell very few stories. Now, Kel, I will occasionally tell a story to. But sometimes when I start telling one to somebody, they'll go, "Oh, I don't want to hear that." And I go, "But you wanted to know. You wanted to hear this." And it's sadly enough, people, even if they say something like, "Oh, what's the worst car wreck you ever worked?" I will go, "Well, we've got to break it into 10 subcategories. The most people deceased, the car messed up. What are you wanting to know? I mean, are you wanting a car wreck where they hit pedestrians, or there's a gazillion different things, and there's nothing glamorous about it. And don't ever think that I think I'm anything, because I'm not. And I just, and that was a hard thing. That was a hard thing to explain to new. They would have a lot of new people ride with me. Lots of rookies would ride with me, and that was one of the first things I would teach them is if I had learned to not try to stop arguments and fights, but listen to what the fight and the argument was about, it just made my life a whole lot easier. I got hurt a whole lot because, first of all, I'd never even been in a fight before. I mean, we went to school where kids literally had their shotguns and gun racks, and we turkey hunted on the way to school, and we carried those locking buck folding knives on our sides at school because we wouldn't think about hurting anyone. Man, when I went to Nashville, I learned real quick, man, that people will sucker punch you, they'll headbutt you, they'll bite you, they'll do all kinds of stuff, and some of them just don't even, I've had one situation that they when they come in, when the doctor comes in to do an academy class or to speak about this certain thing that happens to people when they're on certain drugs, they use an example of me and another officer that we fought with what at that time was a superhuman for 20 minutes before we were able to do anything with the guy. And I'm telling you something, just to put it bluntly, I resorted to some dastardly stuff, everything up to having to shoot somebody. And with the people that were there watching, every one of them would have said that would have been justified. In fact, the guy that was with me, he had a gun malfunction. That's the only reason that we didn't do it. So this, they tell that story in the academy, and when people would come to me and ask me after the rookies would come out of the academy and ask me the story, I would tell them, there's nothing glamorous about that. You wouldn't have wanted to be in the middle of all that was going on. And that's really, I don't mean to just demonize the whole profession and just kind of, whittle it down to something very small. You're going to have something bad happen to you every day. And if not, you're going to see bad things happen to 20 people a day if you work in a city like that. But then there's lots of funny things too.
We gotta address a couple of these questions going back to the Bigfoot thing. But on a very serious note, hey, don't undersell yourself. Or I mean, yeah, it might not be glamorous, but still, it takes people like you doing that job, and the rest of us are people that appreciate that there's someone like y'all doing that job. If I make a phone call, by God, it's because it's something important, and I need somebody like you to come out there and help. And that don't sell that part of it short. Everybody respects what you've been through and what y'all do, and the kind of person that you are, your character. It takes those kind of people in the world, and y'all are the kind to do it. And a special breed. That's right.
Greg, he said what I always say. I mean, he almost used the same verbs that I do. He said, it's just when you get into it, you realize that it's something that somebody has to do. Somebody has to do this. And last thing, I had a rookie with me one time, and we went to one of those calls to where an out-of-state family had been calling this person and couldn't get in touch with them. And y'all probably figure out where I'm going with this. And people had gone by and knocked on the door, and they couldn't get in touch with the person. Their car's out there, and blah, blah, blah. So, and this is a person in poor health. And I had a rookie with me, and we went to this. It was an apartment. And I'll never forget, I had the maintenance guy come. Most of the time we just kicked the door open, but I had the maintenance guy come. But before the maintenance guy got there, I was looking, apartments used to have those vertical blinds. You remember those? Well, there was a crack in those vertical blinds. Well, I could see through that crack, and I could see the stereotypical recliner there with just so many cigarette butts and beer cans and stuff around it. It was just like a completely horrible on the inside. And then there's the bedroom window. And even on the outside, it was covered with Misty, covered with flies. I know Misty knows what I'm going to say. And I'll never forget going and opening the door. And here's something about me. And I'll tell you the truth. I've had many officers go do things for me because I could not. Now, I'll explain it this way. I've gone on lots of calls with children and infants. Some horrible things. And I've had guys that I work with that have children that would make me go do it because they couldn't, they knew that they wouldn't be able to, process what they were seeing. Well, that's the way I am about going into a house where there's somebody that may be deceased or something like that. The scene itself doesn't bother me. It's having to go through and look and suddenly finding whatever you're going to find. I mean, that's just the way it is. I'd rather clear a building with somebody that's looking for somebody armed than to go through somebody's house and trying to find them. But I knew that this person was gone, and there's that rookie. And I opened the door up to that apartment, and it was hot and rough in there. And I said, go find him. And I remember that rookie looked at me and said, man, I don't want to go in there. And that's what I said, just what Greg said. I said, somebody has to do this job. And I said, and here you are. And I said, you thought you'd be chasing people and shooting at people, blah, blah. I go, but this is what it is. And I'll never forget, man, I told him, I said, the first time's always the worst, just like anything. It's just like being tased. The first time's always the worst. But no, he went back in there, and he turned around and come right back out. And he goes, yep, he's in there. And I said, okay, and that was it. But just,
it doesn't take them guys long to figure out the value of Vicks Vapor Rub in your glove box to pull it out and
bingo,
stick it in both nostrils and run it on your lip. Yeah, that way you can kind of tolerate it a little better. Yeah, it's bad. Bama, the worst thing for me, I guess, I've been through a lot of stuff, seen a lot of stuff the last 16 years. Probably a couple of the hardest things that I've ever done was, I'm in a small town and pretty much everybody here knows everybody. I mean, you know everybody. And the worst things I've ever done was me and another officer go to somebody's house to make a death notification.
Yeah.
To have to go inform the family that their loved one was killed in a car wreck or, something happened. That probably bothered me worse than dealing with the people that were shot and stabbed and car wrecks and anything else. But to have to, you're searching your soul on the words, because those words, everybody thinks, well, I'll tell them this. And there is no way whatsoever that you can spin those words to make it easier on anybody. It doesn't matter how you say it.
I belong to they asked me to be in the chaplains program. And when you say chaplain, that kind of gives a religious connotation to it. So when they said, we'd like you to be a part of the chaplains program, well, we only had one chaplain in the police department we have thousands of officers. This is a big department. And they told me, my commander told me, he goes, I want you to be a member of the chaplains program. He goes, not because it has anything to do with religion. He goes, because it has to do with, we need you to go to traumatic scenes. So car wrecks, natural deaths, anything that's a traumatic scene. He goes, kind of traumatic scene counseling. To put it quite blunt, I had worked the street with that commander, and he had seen me speak to he had seen me speak to more mentally ill people over the years than most people have ever seen. And it was not because I have a degree in psychology. It's because for some reason I could just talk to the people. I could get them off a bridge. I could get them to come out from under a bridge. I could get them to, do whatever. So that's why they wanted me to, go that chaplain's program. I'm like Greg. I could see anything, but it's the emotional things, the calls that end up touching you. And I'm not saying you can't turn off your emotions and do the job competently, but when you look back and the emotional things, I've sat with a Vanderbilt doctor on the top of a Vanderbilt parking deck, and he was standing up there for 2 hours, going to jump and kill himself in front of his building. He literally stood in front of his glass building. We couldn't see him because it was mirrors, but we knew there were hundreds and hundreds of his employees and workers and patients and everyone standing there. And he stood on the top of that parking deck for 2 hours. And it took me, a good 2 hours to I didn't talk that man down, but I spoke to him long enough to where I don't know how we did it, but a buddy of mine stripped all his gear off on top of a white parking deck, stripped all his gear off down to a white t-shirt, and was able to, in the guy's peripheral vision, still ease along a wall. And then we were able to snatch that guy off the top of this wall. And that was just, later on I told somebody, I even after it was over, I really went to Vanderbilt Hospital into the emergency room where the man was, because when we took him off the wall, it hurt him a little bit. And he was grateful. I mean, he was absolutely grateful that we did it. But just things along that line. You wonder how, you deal with, like I said, you're in Nashville. Oh, you got country stars and all this stuff. We deal with all kinds of, just all kinds of people and all different kinds of situations. I've never told that story full length to anybody except maybe one time. And I remember telling them that that was on a Sunday morning, believe it or not. And I just told them that's a Sunday, and then after that, you honestly are expected to check in, write it down, and go on to the next one, just right after that. So,
Bama, I've seen guys that get started doing this. Maybe some of the guys that have been in it for a while will tell them, like, look, one thing you need to look at, the most valuable tool that you can have in your toolbox doing this. It's not your gun, it's not your spray, it's not your cuffs, and it is your mind. But you better be brushed up on verbal judo. That verbal judo will either get you in a fight or get you out of a fight. That is probably the most valuable, other than your brain, and you got to have your brain to work that. But
now,
that
did I say the words verbal judo to you?
No, we said that for you.
See, what people don't understand is when Greg said that, that's a terminology that we use, verbal judo. And believe it or not, and everyone can use it in any situation. It's simply you learn to divert a person's aggression. Just like if something was coming towards you, anybody that's a martial artist, you learn how to swipe hands away and stuff. It's the same way with words, with verbal judo. It sure is. We worked with a guy that was never, ever in a fight, all the way until he retired. We used to go, dang, Paul has never, ever been in a fight. And the reason is because Paul was nice. He didn't have an ego. He also never got hurt either. And those of us that were in fights a lot, we got hurt a lot.
Well, Bama, I went on a call with another officer, and the call was that unwanted guest. And I kind of knew some background on what was going on. The father was dying with cancer. He was on hospice, and he was bedridden. And his eldest son was there, and the eldest son and the stepmother didn't get along. And she was commanding him to leave, and he didn't want to leave because his daddy was like, just a day or so he was going to pass. Well, I roll up, and the other officer rolls up behind me, and we get out and go in. Well, the other officer, he was like, basically telling the guy, look, you got to go. They own the house. I know that's your daddy, but this is her house. She said you got to leave, or we're going to get you, you're going to be trespassed. We're going to lock you up. Well, I told the other guy, I said, hold on. And I told the guy that was sitting there, and he's sitting in a chair beside a hospital bed in his daddy's living room, holding his daddy's hand. I'm standing there, and I told him, I said, look, you've known me my whole life. I said, brother, look, I said, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to let anybody touch you. I said, but let's me and you go outside on the porch. And he looked at me. He said, no, y'all going to make me leave. I said, look, we need to go outside. I said, I'll tell you what, you need a break. Just me and you's going to go out on the porch, and we'll go out. I said, they got a swing on the porch. Me and you's going to go out there and smoke. And he looked at me. He's dropped his head, and he just nodded. I said, come on, brother. I said, let's go out on the porch. We walked out on the porch and sat in a swing side by side. I handed him a cigarette, and he lit it. I lit one. We sat there and smoked those cigarettes. But I had made a call before I got there, and I had his sister and his brother-in-law on the way, and it was going to take them about 10 minutes. Me and that guy sat on the porch, peaceful, sat out there on the porch in the swing side by side, and us talking about his dad was fixing to die, and my dad had just died a few months before. And we sat there, and I was on his level of understanding. Now, could me and the other officer had drug him out by his heels? Sure. We were within our rights. That's what it took. But there was no need in it. This guy was hurting. He wasn't a threat. He was just unwanted because him and his mother or his stepmother had a beef. But, by law, he had to leave. But I knew enough about the situation that I let kindness prevail. And that's what more officers, there's a lot of us out there that do that. There's some that don't. And that's the ones that make the rest of us look bad.
It takes somebody though, Greg, like that, and somebody that's went through a lot of hardships and different things. And when you've hit the bottom of the barrel and you're just scraping to try to keep making it through day to day because you're just done. You're done. You're fed up, and you don't know what else to do. You're exhausted. Sometimes it takes somebody that's been there too to try to help you come back out of that, because if you've not been there, you have no idea how those people really feel and what they're really going through. You don't want to be that way, but sometimes you just get so fed up and aggravated, you think there's got to be something better or I'm just done. And if it doesn't get better, then, you got to have somebody that shows you that there is better. I'm telling you,
yeah.
I'm getting teared up just thinking about it because it takes really special people to be able to talk to somebody to pull them out of something like that.
There's a lot of times that I've just put an arm around a total stranger that was distraught. Sometimes you'd be it's unreal what just a hug to somebody. If you can get your arm around them, next thing you know, you're getting a hug, and if you apply that hug back, you can diffuse. You'd be amazed what you can diffuse situation.
I had this isn't funny, it kind of is. We had a lady there in our area of town that was a cutter. She liked to cut herself a lot. And I don't think the other police officers really understood, what that is and what it means or why people do it, because nobody had ever asked the lady. Well, the first time I ever met the lady, to tell you the truth, it really kind of scared me, because I came around the corner and she was standing just with her arms spread out like a cross, and she'd cut herself all up and down her arms. Well, they would always, of course, call an ambulance and do this, that, and the other, and whatever, and lock her up. And this is the point. The woman wasn't trying to kill herself.
Yeah.
But like Greg said, the first time I dealt with her, I came around and I saw her like that, and she ran up into an apartment. And there were some other officers there, and she just basically stood back in the corner of this apartment, and they were afraid to go in there because she had a couple of razor blades in her hand, and she's cutting on herself. And And I said, well, I go in there. Somebody has to do it. I worked in the jail system a while. And, man, you know, I'll look around and pick up some dang chair. Or I'll figure out some way to get you pinned in there, to go in there and get you out. But I said, I'll go in there and get her. And, and I just walked in, like Greg said, close the door. And I said, darling, I said, why do you do this? And she said, nobody's ever asked me that. And she explained the whole thing. Listen, long sleeves should have been the most normal person you'd ever met before. And I knew her years later. I knew her 15 years later when she no longer did that. And I told her, and listen, this old girl, she could be violent too, because in the process of people arresting her over the years, man, they'd whipped on her and stuff like that. And I remember I told her, I said, man, I said, let's just go out there and get in that ambulance. I said, let them take care of you. And I said, I understand. I'll speak to the other officers, blah, blah, blah. And, man, she said, I ain't going. And we went through that 2 or 3 minutes. And finally, I just stuck my arms out. And I said, I'll tell you what. I said, I'll give you a big old hug right here. And I said, and then if you go get in that ambulance, I said, I might give you a bigger hug. And now this is a person that had some mental issues. And her face just lit up. She goes, yeah. And I hugged her, man. And let's put it this way. As soon as they were gone, I had to like change out of myself. But man, I gave her a big hug. And she just came walking in as happy as she could be all the way to the ambulance, got in the ambulance, gave her a big hug out there. And away they went. And, you know, I dealt with her for years. Anytime there was something to do with her, I dealt with her. I could have, you know, it's like, I don't know. I don't think Spencer expected us to get off on all this. But,
Brother, I mean, here's what I tell people too. A lot of people look at law enforcement as, you know, we just want to deal out misery on people,
it's a
and you know,
pain.
it's not that. And y'all, the most wonderful thing, and luckily I've had it several times, is see somebody that you've dealt with, especially dealt with them multiple times, and every time you've dealt with them, you deal with them with the utmost kindness that you can. But
Yep.
when that person, you hadn't seen them in a while, and you really don't know what happened to them,
Mm-hmm.
and then you run up on them, and they look so much better, and then they come find you and want to thank you for saving their life, for
Right.
putting them on the good path, and they're telling you how long they've been clean, and then they're telling you that they got their kids back, and then you know they're telling you that if it wasn't for you, that they probably wouldn't be here. Y'all, you talking about break you down? I don't care who you are. When you have somebody tell you that,
Yeah.
it'll hit your soul. And I had a girl about 2 weeks ago. I hadn't saw her in about 2 or 3 years. I've been there, and I've been a part of this girl going to jail numerous times. And she's working in a store here pretty close. And she'd put on some weight. It's pretty girl, but last time I saw her, she looked like a gut with the crap slung out of it. I mean, eyes sunk in, just skin and bones. In jail, you know, just a yo-yo in and out of jail. Had her kids took away, and I hadn't saw her in a few years. I walked in and I looked at her. I said, "Is that you?" She started smiling. She said, "Yeah." I said, "Dadgum girl, you're looking good." She said, "Oh, I'm getting fat." I said, "No, you ain't fat." I said, "What have you done?" She said, "I got my life together." And she said, "I got my kids back." Y'all, I about broke down right there in the store. And, you know, she's like, you know, she said, "I know I put y'all through a lot." I said, "Well, you was going through a lot." She said, "Well," you know, she said, "if y'all hadn't, you know," she said, "I ain't gonna lie," I said, "I was mad when y'all was taking me to jail." She said, "But I see now that if y'all hadn't, I wouldn't be here." And y'all, that'll absolutely hit home.
Mm-hmm. Just listen, man. At our church here, the judge for our county goes to church here. He's a very nice, devout man. Good musician too. He at church here not too long ago, there was a couple of people that had been going there forever. Well, they decided to become official members, and he announced them as members and hugged them. And he also said that he sent both those people to prison. He goes, I remember when I sent y'all to prison. And he goes, and now I'm hugging you. And he goes, and I just thought that was something. I mean, Spencer, let's just end on a funny story for the police stuff. Do some Bigfoot stuff you want to.
Are we
Okay.
gonna have Greg talk about ears for beers, or you got something in mind?
Well, hang on just a second. Hold on. You got a couple of questions right quick.
Do it.
Hold on.
But anyway, and when I do it, this is going to be the only time that I almost nearly got eat up real good by one of our police dogs.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And you get, if you work with police dogs, you get bit. That's the rule. I mean, the first day you're down there, they will say, if you work with police dogs, you get bit by a police dog. And I've been bit a few times, and my dog really did some in training exercises, bit some people. But one,
oh, sorry.
yeah,
Okay.
my last dog that I had. Well, when we would have some downtime, believe it or not, you would have downtime sometimes. We would try to go somewhere and do some training. And at our canine office, we had a huge box. And when you opened it up, it was full of hundreds of keys, because we would go to people's businesses and we would ask them, can we use your building for training, and will you give us a key? And the reason is because then if it gets burglarized and we have to come over here and search it, we will be familiar with your building. And we had keys to hundreds and hundreds of buildings and all kinds of stuff. Well, me and a buddy of mine, it was early in the morning, and we thought, man, let's go train a little bit with our dogs. So we went over to one of the schools in Nashville, one of the metropolitan public schools. I mean, they're gigantic. I worked in one of the schools as a police officer, and we had 5,000-6,000 kids in that school. Well, I told him on the way over there, I said, let's switch to our special ops channel. And the only people that had that channel was K9, aviation, because we did a lot of work out of the helicopters with the dogs. And not even the SWAT guys had this channel. Just K9 and aviation were the only people that had this channel. I told him, I said, to make it look more realistic for your partner, he had a big old sable shepherd named Nero. Just a big old dark sable shepherd. I told him, I said, to make it more realistic, I'll meet you over at such and such school, and I'll go ahead and go in and hide. And I said, and then you park at a different area of the school, and he won't see another police car or something. I mean, dogs are that smart. I said, then you can come in. He'll think he's searching for an actual burglar. He said, okay. So I drive over that dang school, and I find my way into the school, because there's not a single one of them that I couldn't find an open door or an open window. I could get into any building that I try to get into. Well, here's the kicker, y'all, for people that don't know much about apprehension dogs. You know how you wear the protective sleeves so when the dog bites you to protect your arm? Well, maybe 60% of the time we didn't use a sleeve at all. We would hide somewhere to where when the dog found you, it could not get to you. Then the officer could give the dog lots of praise and excitement, and then they will allow the dog to see you, and they will hook the dog up on a leash. The dog never grabs a hold of you. He just praises the dog the whole time. And honestly, this will sound silly, but this is the way it is. The dog runs you out of the building. In other words, I keep looking back at the dog like I'm with a terrified look on my face. And I let the handler move me out of the building with the dog. So we call that no bite. That's what we say. So I told him, I said, I'll get there and hide. It'll be realistic. I said, I'll hide, no bite. He goes, okay. So I go into this school, and I told him, I said, now call me on the radio when you get here. And I said, and just say, are you ready? And I'll tell you yes or no. That's all I told him. Just key up the radio and go, are you ready? And I'll say yes or no. Now picture this. if you've ever been in a giant school building, I'm walking down the halls and I'm looking, and I've hid in I don't know how many places in this school before when we've trained, but I'm trying to find like a really good one, that'll test this dog. Because Nero, side note, Nero hates me. We trained our dogs at the same time, so he was always the bad guy for my dog, and I was always the bad guy for his dog. So, anytime the dog saw me, he just assumed bad guy. The only plus about Nero is he had little short legs, and if I had a set of cleats on a training field, I could outrun that German Shepherd. It's the only German Shepherd we had that I could outrun. Well, I'm in that building walking around looking for a place to hide, and I'm looking in classrooms. I'm really wanting to find something high to get up on, to test how the airs move. And all of a sudden, way off in the distance of this school, I hear a canine warning. Now, we're required to, when we enter a building, unless there's exigent circumstances, such as, somebody immediately going to kill you, you're supposed to yell out a warning before you release your canine. In other words, I'll yell out a warning, Metro Police Canine, come out now, or a dog will be released to find you. That is the warning. And I would add at the end of mine, the dog will apprehend you by biting you. That's what I would say. Not only that, I would yell the warning twice, and that came in handy a couple of times in a lawsuit. I hear that warning way in the distance. Now, and I immediately turn around and I go, I'm not hid. I'm like looking, and no sleeve, no protection. And I hear the warning in the distance. The great thing about my dog is while you yelled the warning, he wouldn't make a noise. You could turn him loose, and I've apprehended lots of burglars and bad guys because they thought I was bluffing, because they didn't hear a dog barking. Nero would bark the whole time. The second he walked in a building, he started barking till you cut him loose. And I could hear that barking echoing down these maze of hallways and him yelling the warning. As soon as he yelled the warning, he just cut the dog loose. And I keyed up the radio, and I started yelling into the radio, but I realized that if I said it quieter, then the dog wouldn't have heard me. But I'm yelling into the radio, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm just yelling. Immediately, I hear him start yelling at this dog in the hallway. And he's yelling, we use German commands and stuff. He's yelling all these German commands to try to get this dog to what we call recall. If I cut Eros loose, I can say a command, he'll plow up, stop, come back to you. So he's yelling at this dog to try to get it to recall, and this dog's never been great at it. So I'm on my own. And I literally can hear it sounded like hoof prints in that hallway. And there's a maze of hallways, and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, where's he going to come from? I got to get somewhere. I don't have sleeve on. This is what this dog has been waiting on for years. This dog has waited on this for probably 6 years to get to bite me, because my dog's bit Mark. My dog bit Mark in a demo in front of Cub Scouts and had to go get 28 staples in his leg.
Oh,
so
man.
his dog is due to bite me now.
This is payback. Yeah.
The dog's running. Mark is screaming in a hallway somewhere, running. No, next, Nero. He's screaming. I opened up a door that had a crash bar on it. And, in schools, they have those doors that when you swing back the magnets, they hit it'll go back and hit a magnet and the door will stay open.
Yeah.
Well, during a fire, they switch those off so the doors are closed. Well, those doors were closed, and I hit this. We're in a dark school in the middle of the night, and we only have flashlight lights on. I hit a crash bar and opened this door, and it stuck back against the magnet. And I went to pull the door, and the magnet wouldn't let go. So I couldn't close the door behind me. So when I lit the room, we would hold our flashlights straight up to light up the room. I realized that I was inside a gymnasium with one door that went in, and that was the door that I came in. There wasn't any doors to get out. And I looked around the room, and they had pushed all the bleachers back, and all the bleachers were locked. And it was just like a wall of wood on each side and bleachers. Well, I'm going through all this in my mind so fast, listening to barking and the running and Mark screaming, and I'm still screaming too. I'm not hid. I'm not hid. I'm just screaming my head off. I start looking at the basketball goal, thinking I used to could reach up and grab a basketball goal, but that was when I was maybe 135 pounds, and here I am with all my K9 gear on. Like I said, 330, 310 or something. And I got to looking around, and I spotted one of those chin-up bars that they have bolted permanently to the wall in a gymnasium. And I saw that bar, but that thing was so high up on the wall that they had designed it to where when you pulled the bleachers out, that's how you got up to use the chin-up bar. And I'm looking at that chin-up bar, and I'm estimating it's about 9 feet. It ain't as tall as a basketball goal. I go running across that dang gym on that hard floor in those Danner combat boots, wearing a SWAT type outfit, blouse down and everything. And Greg will know what I'm talking about. You wear a belt around your waist when you wear your uniform. Well, then you take your bat belt with all your gear on it and you clip it on over the top of it. And then you wrap these things called keepers around your belt in several places to hold the belt onto that one. Most people only had 3 or 4 keepers. Well, no, not Bama. I had a bunch because I had somebody choke me unconscious and try to get my gun off of me one time. And they had twisted my gun belt completely around my body 2 or 3 times to try to get my gun out of the holster. So now I carried a bunch of keepers so my belt wouldn't slide around. I'm running across that gym and I'm undoing keepers and I'm literally leaving a trail of equipment behind me. I mean, really, I've already broke out running to where my mics come off my shoulder and I'm just running and dragging the microphone behind me and I'm dropping keepers and I eventually dropped the whole dang belt. And my belt had everything I need when I left that car. I'm telling you, it had lots. I dropped that belt and I'm just trying to take everything off and I'm screaming. He's screaming. Dog's running. About that time, I look back and man, that dog breaches the door of that dang gym. Now, this is the way I saw it. I'm going to tell you.
This is the way that I saw it.
Oh, yeah. Because listen, I've been around on Nero a bunch. And I've seen Nero do a lot of things to a lot of bad people. When he came in that gym, he came in at an angle. And when he came in, his head turned around and his mouth was open. And if you've ever seen Jurassic Park, where they're at the first time you see the T-Rex, where they see the cables break over the vehicle and you see the water kind of vibrate and that thing steps over and you see it the first time, that's what that dang dog looked like to me when he came through there. Man, his head hung around and his teeth in there was so white. And I remember just running towards that dang bar on the wall, and that was going to put him straight behind me. Luckily, he couldn't catch traction. When he tried to take off real fast, he couldn't catch traction. He was up on his dang toes. And that gave me 1 or 2 seconds, and across there I went, and I was screaming and running. He caught traction and came across the gym. Well, the first thing he did was he started grabbing my equipment on the floor because it had scent on it, period. The dogs are trained to do what we call article searches. If somebody throws a dang gun out on the interstate or a knife, my dog will go find it just because you had it in your hand. Okay? So That dog grabbed my utility belt and shook it 2 or 3 times till he realized it weighed 7 or 8 pounds. Then he dropped it and he kept coming. By that time, I'd made it to the wall over there. And I was running with a dang flashlight in my hand, running across there. And when I kind of spotted the wall where I was going to go, man, I just slung the dang flashlight behind me and just slid it across the floor because I knew if it spun, it would just. I knew it was seeing light everywhere, maybe confusing. All the things that you've seen bad guys try to do to get a police dog to stop, I'm trying to do it other than pull a treat out of your pocket, which a guy did to me one night. Not a good idea.
No.
Now, the few times I've told the story, this is how I tell it. When I spotted that thing on the wall, I slung the flashlight and I took a few steps. And when the light spun around and hit that wall, I put my foot on that dang cinder block wall to try to get a step up. And I launched myself up and I missed that bar.
Oh, no.
But I caught it on the way back down. No, really.
Landed on the dog and got him in a headlock.
No, I went for that dang bar, and I actually my adrenaline was going. I caught that thing, and when I caught it up high enough, I put it in the bend of my arm, and I wrapped my arms around it. And the second that I pulled my legs up, man, that dog hit that wall, and he was and I mean jumping and jumping, and I'm holding myself up on that dang bar. Now, we found lots of people hiding up high before. I found a guy standing on the basketball goal in a school one night, burglarizing it. Well, Mark's screaming. He still ain't made it there yet. And I'm up there, dog's going nuts. Well, as soon as the dog gets me treed, so to speak, I started yelling at Mark. I started trying to yell to him, but he couldn't hear me because he's yelling, no, come. He comes breaking in the dang gym. And I started yelling at. I immediately started saying, praise him, because I wanted it to be a positive experience. And I'm yelling, praise him up. And Mark, he literally came in and bent over, and I've done this before too. He put his hands on his knees just like, because he was terrified that his dog had bit somebody that didn't need to be bit. And my dog did that one time in a warehouse, a man working there who wasn't supposed to be there. That was a long day for that man. But I was yelling, praise him. And Mark comes and gets him and hooks him up. And I got down, and we were kind of laughing about it, but we wanted to get done what we wanted to get done. Well, as soon as I hit the ground, I started acting all terrified. Oh, no. And every time the dog barks, you flinch and fear, you act like you're being intimidated. And as I'm walking, I'm trying to pick all my stuff up at the same time. It was spread out everywhere. And he eventually walked me out of the building. And when you get outside to the door, you take off running. Well, he got me outside. I took him off. I took off running, and he put the dog over in his car. Then, man, we both just sat down. I mean, we were sitting there laughing, scared to death, covered in sweat. I mean, that's the only time that I've nearly gotten bit really bad, other than not having a sleeve and have one. We had a muzzle on one time in a building where I could fight with him. We used to put muzzles on our dogs, and when the dog found us, they'll hit you like a dang sledgehammer with that muzzle. I mean, it feels like somebody, punching you with a fist. But then we'll grab the dog by the hair on its neck, and we'll wrestle with them, get them on their back, and stuff like that. I saw one of our dog handlers get a dang dog down and bite the dog. Act like he's biting him on the neck. It just drove the thing insane. But
You
Nero,
can bite a dog and they'll not bite you no more.
Yeah.
That really works.
well, ours don't, because I've had lots of suspects bite mine. But that was the same old dog. Nero had that on, and Mark yelled a warning and could see me standing right there, and he yelled a warning. And I said, "Cut him loose!" And when he turned the dog loose, the dog stopped, bent over, hooked his front nails in that thing and just peeled it off. This is one of those good leather ones. And when he peeled that thing off, he just looked up at me like that. And I just went, ah! I yelled and literally just darted into a classroom on my right and closed the door behind me. And
Misty, Spencer, I know there's a story. Misty's holding back because she's been a dog sometime in her life.
Oh yeah.
Hey, Vicky's done it too. She knows I'm telling the truth. Look, Bill bottom. You got a dog that's mean or biting or whatever. You grab that sucker up and grab his ear and
oh yeah, yeah.
doing it again.
How many times did you have to bite?
Crazier than they are.
I'm
How many
lucky, man.
times did you have to bite JR to break him?
Quite a bit. We've already got guys making comments after the show is over about Misty. Now they're going to know that she's a biter. This is going to take her to a different level.
Oh man.
Well,
You're telling me you ain't
it
never
was-
bit one of your dogs that's done something they ain't supposed to.
Oh yeah.
I'm glad to be out, and I'm glad to have it. I'm going to be honest with you, man. I probably would have struggled more with being a Christian if I'd have continued to do that, because the only thing you're around were bad people most of the time, and some people it's just not possible to treat them kindly. I mean, if you do, sometimes you get hurt. And but I'm a person that prays, and I thank God that I've got insurance, and I thank God that I have a retirement and I'm safe, and I've had 2 or 3 kills, friends of mine that were killed in the line of duty while I was there, and it's just and there's times when I've done things that and listen, y'all, I'm not a tough guy, and I'm not anything like that. I'm not anybody. But there's been times when I've worked with guys that had kids, and we've had calls where I've just said, man, I'll go do it. Just, it's that simple. So, yeah.
We do have to address I think you can probably summarize a lot of it with the one question.
What?
Do police, and we've asked everybody that has been law enforcement that has been on this show before, did you ever get talked to about anything about, like, did your commanding officer ever tell you that there were boogers and if you see one not to report it, or did you have a private phone number to call?
Now, while I was working, no, because now, first of all, Nashville is Davidson County. It's a municipality. So the county is the city. So most people don't realize Nashville covers 760 something square miles. So there are areas of Nashville, which we call them wilds and wastelands. There's areas of Nashville that are as wooded in the county as any place you've ever seen. The Cumberland River comes through. The Harpeth River comes through. There's lots of waterways and swamp lands and stuff along that line. You find a lot of police officers will live in certain areas of town more out of town, and they live out in the country out there. I've never, while I was working, ever had a call about that. I've never had anybody tell me, nor have I ever had anything where I thought that maybe. I have had a couple of calls that seem to be paranormal, and believe it or not, some of the guys called me to come over there while they were there. They were actually working burglaries, believe it or not. We have a guy that just retired, though, that was really big into it, that was a sergeant, and into really ghost hunting. And he and I did some actual businesses up there that people would let us do. But as far as anybody telling me, our supervisor, no. Now, my childhood friend down here, he's career law enforcement. His dad was the sheriff when I grew up. He was a good sheriff. The guy was in the same class as me from kindergarten through high school. He became the chief of the little town I went to school in, and he remained the chief there until he retired. So that's how long his name is Bart, and that's how long Bart was there. When I started getting a few little reports from childhood friends and people around here, somebody said, well, you should speak to Bart. He had something happen to him on a dirt road one night. So, of course, I called him. And some people have probably heard me tell this because it's pretty brief. But there's a place outside of Berry, Alabama. Now, there's a big Berry close to Birmingham. We're in Fayette County. Outside of Berry, there's a place. I won't tell the name of it on here. But it's a place where kids used to go to at night to park or to drink or, do whatever they do outside of town. When Bart was still law enforcement, he had taken a dirt road and he had gone up there at night just to see. And he's not the type to go harass people and stuff like that. Just, let's make that clear. He's just going up there and make sure ain't nobody dead later. But somebody told me the story, and then they said, well, talk to him about it. So I called him, and he said, well, I just drove up there. He goes, and I was actually on the way home. He goes, I wanted to stop and go to the bathroom somewhere. He goes, I opened the front door, got out. He goes, I literally left the door open. He said, so I could, hear the radio. And down here, there's on our radios, there's never any lull in traffic. On 12 or 15 channels, it's constant traffic. Down here, you may go for hours. You may not get a call all day down here. So he said he had the door open to hear the radio. And he said, he goes, this is kind of the words he used. He goes, something immediately rushed up on me. He goes, and it was strange because I'm out there relieving myself, and all of a sudden, it's just there. And he goes, and it's as if it's looming over me. He goes, and I can feel its breath and hear its breath. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah. And I said, what'd you do? He goes, I didn't stop what I was doing. He goes, I literally took a step. He goes, I took a step with my right foot, and it was in the floorboard. And in the car I went. He goes, I didn't bother finishing up. I didn't bother anything. I said, did you look back? Did you do it? He goes, no. He goes, I didn't look. I didn't do nothing. He goes, I got in the car. He goes, and I hauled out of there. And I've had maybe one thing happen to me in my life to where I thought something was right there, and it brings to mind, who is it that Mark Newell's been going over to their property and doing his little documentary?
PJ.
Is it
Paul and Pam, PJ, Arkansas.
Right. You know how Pam had that voice that told her, don't look over there. You remember that? She said she thought it was a guardian angel or something. I've had that voice a lot of times, and you have to, in police work, you have to ignore it. There's times when, man, you just know bad stuff's going to happen. You got to go. I mean, you just got to depend on your training or whatever. But I've had things happen, in the Bigfoot world before, to where something happened with Moose one time, and he wouldn't move, and I went to get him, and I felt something. And I had that voice that just said, if you turn and look, there's going to be things go through my mind very fast, y'all. There was just that thing that said, if you look, there's going to be something that mentally you're not mentally prepared to see what is there. There was a voice telling me, whatever's there, if you look at that, it's going to change your life in a negative way. Let's put it that way. Okay. And I've had that feeling before at work, like I said, when you have to go in and find people sometimes. But otherwise, I've never had. I'll be honest. I don't know of many people that are in law enforcement that or knowers or believers or anything. Anytime I go to a national park, I always wonder if there's a park officer anywhere that,
That's what I think too.
I don't want to say believes in Bigfoot. I wonder if there's a park officer that knows that Bigfoot exists. But, I guess we're all few and far between. Like the guys were very closed-minded about paranormal type stuff and work and stuff like that. And but by that time we'd had a lot of those shows on television, the ghost hunting shows and things along that line. And so there was a couple of us that were kind of into it a little bit. But I got called to a couple of places, and it's not really anything exciting to speak of, but where they thought somebody had been in their home and moved things around and things like that. Wendell asked if I think that was a dog, man. That gave me that feeling. I don't know. I'll tell you where I was. Kel and I hiked there this week. We hiked there this week, and I go by the spot. We didn't hike by that spot this time because they opened another trail up that's been closed. But my first thought when I got the feeling was that there was a big mountain lion perched up on a rock, because we were in a missing 411 situation. Me alone at my age with certain body injuries, with a dog with me, between two rains right before a heavy weather system came through, and I was in a boulder field of limestone or granite. So that I fit all the criteria, and pop, all that went through my brain when I looked at that dog and saw him the way he was looking at something. So I thought cat, and then I thought, oh no, I just thought this is it. But that was about it. Oddly enough, this time it got dark. This is the only thing I heard the whole time, just to clear this up from our trip this time. But we were on a river that was so loud that Kel and I were using walkie-talkies while we were in camp walking around because the river was so loud. We were standing there just prior to cooking, and I thought it was a person or a child crying or screaming over the water. But we both stood up at the same time and kind of looked around, and I said, "Did you hear that?" And she goes, "Yeah." Well, right when she said, "Yeah," coyotes. And listen, I looked at my watch. When the coyotes started up, I remember looking at my watch, and this was broad daylight, and they were across up on the side of a mountain. I thought, well, that's real odd for those, coyotes to kick up. Well, we go to cook, and this is odd too for anybody that's been around moose. He got under the picnic table, where it's like muddy and dirty under there.
Yeah.
He got under the picnic table, and then he barked. He barked one time, and I barely heard it because of the water. And I looked around, and I bent down, and the first thing I did was looked at the entrance to the campsite, because I have my campsite booby trapped with there's dang those 22 caliber ram set nail gun things, go off. The first thing I did was look, and then I looked down under the table, and man, he was just had his head down, staring straight through the table and where the legs at, where you see it, man, right into those woods. And he was sitting there, and I just said, "What's wrong with you?" And I stood back up, and maybe 5 seconds later, whoof, he barked again, and I looked, and he's looking at the same place. Well, you can't, it's broad daylight, but when you look into the Nantahala, you're looking into a jungle. And I got the dang FLIR out in the daytime, and looked around over there, and I really wasn't tromping around too much, just because of the timber rattlers and the copperheads. But that's really the only thing that we heard the whole time, other than the lady telling us about that when walking through some guy's camp over there.
Good enough.
Yeah.
Well, y'all, thank you for everybody in the chat and everybody that makes it to the end of the show. Another
I'm
two and
sorry
a
this
half
turned.
hour show. Huh?
I'm sorry it's turned into a kind
No,
of a
no,
police
no.
show.
It
Well,
was a good show.
I enjoyed it.
You know,
Well,
hey, everybody in the comments liked everything that was talked about. And also, as I've said before, and I will say again, it does not hurt to have these very realistic shows
Yes.
that just show how human everybody is. I mean, guys, you just cannot talk about Bigfoot and dog man stuff 24/7 all the damn time on everything. You got to be a little bit realistic. It was a good show. See,
well, I
Aaron agrees.
just want folks to know that I just look. I got out of police work because, I've worked around thousands of guys and girls. I've worked around some of the best police officers in the world. I've worked around some of the sorriest ones you've ever met too. I'm sorry, that's just the truth. They're just people. But I just want people to know if I enjoyed it or liked it, I'd still be in it. Probably. I have lots of friends at my age that they're still in it, or not friends, associates. But when it got to the point to where when you get to the point to where you're trying to produce more numbers and things than anything else, and it's really more important about how much you get done paper wise or things. They disliked me because I didn't write tickets the last 2 years I was there. Now think about that. In a town that size with all those interstate systems, I did not write a single traffic citation for the last 2 years, unless it was required in a crash or something like that. I would simply tell the person, you got a choice. I can write you a citation, or I can take 3 minutes of your time here and you can listen to me. And they would listen to me every time. I would let them go. And this ain't saying nothing about myself, but they would send cards to the station. They would send cards and letters and stuff to the precinct or to downtown, to the main thing. And they would say, this person pulled me over, and I've never had somebody explain this to me before. I've never had somebody had a police officer tell me that it was important to them that I got somewhere safe today. They usually and so I got out of it because, man, I just got to where I didn't like it anymore.
Yeah, so now you do this with idiot.
I know. Isn't it something? It is really something.
Hey,
yeah, somebody said it's too scary. Now go get counseling. Yeah, everybody could use therapy. I'll just tell you that now. But it's therapeutic just to be able to talk about stuff too. Greg, when you had all your Bigfoot encounters and all your terrified,
I should have been a damn therapist.
yeah.
Oh
Greg
yeah, you'd have made a great therapist.
Mm-hmm.
She would have been. She would have made a wonderful.
Awesome.
She'd have been a great therapist.
Tell me all your problems.
Well, I hope it was worth everybody's time, and I don't tell stories much because I don't.
Listen,
It's
that's
every
true,
story you tell. If I tell it exactly the way it happened, it sounds. Sometimes it almost sounds like you're bragging, or that you're telling about something good that happened. I'm simply telling it exactly the way it happened. And there's lots of
guys. Go back and look. I forget. Kathy put it up here. Thank you, Kat. There it is. That's Bama. Bama actually has a channel where he does slingshotting. We're not even getting started on that. Don't even start, Bama. Don't start.
Yeah, man.
Just one second.
I appreciate her putting that on there.
Yeah, look, just 1 second right there. That comment that Duty Bird put up, if y'all can highlight that one up, I want to say something about it. And that's nail on the head right there. That's the one thing about today that's wonderful, is these people that may kind of knew who Bama was, or maybe didn't know who Bama was. Bama's got to show himself in a light of what kind of man he is and what kind of guy he is. And that leads credit to when he's talking about encounters he's had. So yeah, today's been a great show, Bama. I mean, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you as a friend and as a brother. And that brother, all the respect in this group you've earned, 100% earned it.
Well,
And
I
yeah,
appreciate
I
it.
mean,
I used to tell people I got out of the job because I was tired around being around tough people all the time. And I was around ordinary people that do extraordinary things sometimes. But yeah, like I appreciate Greg saying that. I don't want ever people to think I'm other than just a normal person. I've just had a career that's allowed me to see and do some things. If I look back on it now, though, I'd go back to be a firefighter instead, because everyone loves a firefighter. But yeah, now, yep, just I appreciate her putting my
I
little
know
YouTube thing up
everybody
there.
loves firefighters and cops and everybody. It's not just, especially in them sexy little uniforms.
oh my God.
Here we go. Gonna get a bunch of comments off this show. She bites and now she's into uniforms.
Yeah.
No,
Hey, that was Christy Leslie right
And see
there.
me,
y'all.
I don't read the comments anymore. I don't do comments much anymore.
Just reach out to him on Facebook. Get to know Bama. He's
Yeah.
been around for years and everything.
And y'all, one main thing before we get off here, y'all, tomorrow when you're eating those hot dogs or those steaks or barbecue or whatever, y'all just think about the people that gave the ultimate price so we got the freedom we got. And I know people get Veterans Day confused with Memorial Day, but y'all, tomorrow is about the people that paid the ultimate price. Now I appreciate all the vets. I appreciate all the vets. Now I'm big. I'm big on Veterans Day too, but tomorrow, and people get that confused. But y'all, tomorrow is for the people that paid that ultimate price, and the check they wrote, it got called in, and so y'all be safe. Hope everybody's safe this whole weekend. And but like I said, y'all just think about the people that gave up the ultimate price for us to have the freedoms that we got.
I agree. The moose.
Oh yeah, the moose.
Hey, buddy.
There he is.
All right, I'll let you go.
All right, y'all. Bama, thanks for sharing so much. Tell
Well,
Kel
I
we said
appreciate
hi.
Well, y'all, I appreciate y'all. I always say this. I love the people in the chat, and some of my best friends are in there. And
Yep.
y'all are my people. So when we see each other and visit stuff like that, I always tell people, man, just don't even think about what I used to do for a living. I'm far past all that now. But anyway, next time I come on, we'll talk about camping and Bigfoot or something.
Okay.
Bama, are y'all gonna try to go over to the Bigfoot conference in Anniston in a couple of weeks?
Well, like you and I have spoke, Greg, I was wanting to go because a lot of people are going to be, staying somewhere. But man, I don't think people, that don't have campers and generators and stuff realize what Alabama's like in June down here. I thought about maybe just coming down for the day and going to it or something like that, but we'll see, because I'd like to see a bunch of people.
Yeah, I think that's probably what I'm gonna do. Is I'll probably go where they're camping that Saturday night, stay pretty late, and come back home.
Yeah, it might be all right. But anyway, I sure do appreciate y'all putting up with me, and we'll get on here and we'll talk Bigfoot stuff. I thought we were going to talk camping and stuff, so I got my whole fire kit. I got out all the equipment I tested this time.
I enjoyed it. I'll just tell
I
you,
tested all kinds of new equipment and stuff. And
Did you?
Well, this means you
we'll
have
do
to come
that
back.
next time.
We'll go over it next time.
yeah, we do that
I
because
enjoyed today.
yeah,
I liked hearing the stories about what you done. It makes people get to know you a little better, and I mean, I don't know, I enjoyed it, especially picturing seeing you running from that dog. I'm sorry.
oh man, T-Rex. What's interesting, I'll close mine with this. Like most service animals, we have to have them put down, sometimes. That's really the reason I got out handling police dogs is I was raised with animals. I'm emotional about animals. All my service dogs' ashes are in there in a box on my dresser. But old dang Nero, when he finally had retired and started having some health problems, we decided to put him down, that old mean dog of Mark's. And since I had always played the bad guy from that dog, when we went to have him put down at a certain vet we use there in Nashville, I drove him in the back, and he laid in the back of my car with that dog and cried, and I cried the whole way there in the back. And that dog would lay there and his tail would wag every once in a while, and we were crying, and then he'd raise his head up and start barking because I'm up in the front driving through the cage, And when he would bark, Mark would just cry and say, "That a boy, Nero, that a boy, Nero." And we cried. I'll never forget that. Taking him to the vet. And honestly, after they put him down, that's the only time I ever got to put my hands on that dog. And I remember that. Anyway, that was the Ballad of Nero. Yeah, Buster.
Well, that's a way to close the show. Happy Memorial Day weekend, y'all.
Don't listen to him, Bama.
Yeah, y'all. We'll catch y'all later. Bama loves y'all.
Take care, brother.
See ya.
Thanks, Bama.
Thank
Really.
Bama.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
All right, y'all. Catch y'all next weekend.
Yep.
Everybody have a good night.
Big love, everybody.
Yep.
See you.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'll see y'all later.
See
You
ya.
got a biting dog, bite him back.
Okay.
Oh, man, look. On the computer, you have to hit okay. Anyway, just turn me on, turn me up, and turn me loose.